To start the game collection off, I'm going to be going through some of my odds and ends from other consoles and systems, but after that I'm going to get right into Nintendo. So without further ado, first things I have to start are Space Invaders and Missile Command on the Atari 2600. I thought these were some cool cartridges, basically, not too much to say. I've played them on like Atari Flashback consoles, but I just thought that these are pretty cool. Atari carts are fun to collect because of the neat artwork you find on them. Next up is my Sega Game Gear collection. It's pretty tiny and I don't usually collect Game Gear games, but I did find a decent stack of Game Gear games along with a broken Game Gear at a thrift store a while ago. I've since traded some of the other games away that I really didn't care about, but these were some of the more notable titles / had the cooler artwork, so I decided to keep these. And rounding off the odds and ends of my collection, I have a complete in box copy of E.T. on the Atari 2600. It's signed by the AVGN, Mike Matei, and Kyle Justin. I met them at a convention in Pennsylvania and had them sign this. I got it for $10, which I thought was a pretty good deal. It is a little beat up on the top, but it does have everything, including the cartridge right here, which actually looks pretty nice. So yeah, this is a neat kind of historical video game piece to have. Getting into NES cartridges, I have the Adventures of Bayou Billy. This is the only game that I have complete in box, and I found this at the thrift store with the Game Gear and everything like that. But yeah, it's pretty neat. I don't usually collect NES games, but it was cheap and hard to pass up. Here I have Dick Tracy and also the original Castlevania. The Dick Tracy that I bought at that same convention, and it's signed by Mike Matei and James, and Castlevania I found at that thrift store with everything else that I found. Most of these NES games I actually got from my grandma, who had an NES at her house, and she ended up finding a big bag of these NES games behind her couch one day and gave them to me. So most of these I haven't played because I actually don't have an NES, but I like to keep them in the collection because they're pretty cool. And all great NES collections have to have Zelda and Zelda 2: Adventure of Link. The Super Nintendo pickings are a little bit slim in my collection, but I do enjoy the games for the most part. I have A Link to the Past and this Super Game Boy here. I found the Super Game Boy pretty cheap, and the Link to the Past was actually one of the last Zelda games I needed to get for my collection. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot of Super Nintendo games, but I have been thinking about getting a Super Nintendo Classic recently, and just the value you get with that is incredible because a lot of the Super Nintendo games that I want to play are really expensive. So yeah, while I would like to have some physical copies for the Super Nintendo Classic is a pretty good deal for the money you put into it. Next up are my Nintendo 64 games. The Nintendo 64 was basically my first console. I have a lot of fond memories playing through Zelda with my dad and just a bunch of other games, and it's a really cool console. I don't have a whole lot again for this, but I do have some of the greats, as you'll see coming up here with Pokemon Stadium, Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, Midway Classics. These are some of the more well-known popular N64 games. Got Majora's Mask over here, Star Fox 64, F-Zero X, GoldenEye, and of course every collection has to have The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Complete in box. Next up I have these really cool custom cases for my Game Boy Color games. Game Boy Color boxes are pretty hard to come by in their original cardboard form. So these are some modified DS cases. I'll actually open this up. That have special cartridge holders for the actual Game Boy Color games. And then the cover art is based off of the actual box art, but printed specifically for these DS style cases. So I have the Zelda Oracle games and Wario Land 3. So this is the entirety of my GameCube collection, just a couple of Resident Evil games. I haven't actually played a whole lot of these, but I've been wanting to recently after the reveal of Resident Evil 2 Remake from E3. I used to have a lot more GameCube games like Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, F-Zero GX, all these big name ones, but that was back when I was younger, and I unfortunately traded those in to GameStop for way less than they're worth now, it's my number one gaming regret is trading in my GameCube and all my games, but maybe one day I'll rebuild the GameCube back to its former glory. For the Nintendo DS, we have The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass and The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. The games actually aren't in these, but I used to have them. These are just the cases. One day I'll probably refill them back in, but I pretty much played through the games. They're not great, but they're not bad for what the DS was capable of handling. When it comes to the 3DS, I have a lot more titles that I like, from Super Smash Bros., Mario games, Fire Emblem, Zelda. I've collected a whole lot of stuff that I want on it. There's a couple more titles that I still want to grab, but these are my 3DS games. Moving on to the Wii, I have a couple of loose games here, House of the Dead Overkill and Link's Crossbow Training. Haven't played House of the Dead, but Link's Crossbow Training was pretty fun, especially if you had the Zapper peripheral, which I think it came with. Here's just a couple of Wii games that are not necessarily shovelware, but just games that I wouldn't call like must-buys on the system. Everybody has a copy of Wii Fit, Carnival Games, Just Dance 4, Star Trek Conquest. These are actually some games from family members. And Star Wars The Force Unleashed, which actually had a multiplayer mode in it that was exclusive to, I believe, the Wii. So there's something if you're a fan of Star Wars. I wouldn't suggest getting that version. The 360 and PS3 versions are much better, or even the PC. The Wii was a big console for my family. I remember on Christmas Day coming downstairs and opening it up and getting a whole bunch of games. This was right at the peak of when Wiis were hard to find. And yeah, we got surprised with Super Mario Galaxy, and my entire family really enjoyed playing Guitar Hero, which is pretty big because a lot of them, other than myself, don't really play games a whole lot. So it was always fun to be able to sit around the TV and rock out with some fake plastic guitars and rock music. And if this isn't just a picture of my middle school to high school, more so middle school gaming trends, it was skateboarding and Call of Duty. I put so many hours into Skate It, and Call of Duty 3 was actually my first Call of Duty game. Pretty big step up to Modern Warfare 2, which was the next one I bought after Call of Duty 3. But yeah, a lot of interesting memories with these two titles. And here we have Mad World and No More Heroes, some more recent additions to my collection. I haven't had a chance to really play through Mad World yet, but I have played No More Heroes and I really like it a lot. I've been playing through a lot of the Suda51 games, and more you'll see in future episodes here. But yeah, No More Heroes is really cool, and I'm looking forward to Travis Strikes Again on the Switch coming out later this year. And rounding out the Wii collection, you gotta have Zelda, of course. If you can't tell by now, I'm a pretty big Zelda fan. And also, it wouldn't be Wii if you didn't have a copy of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. When it comes to the Wii U, there's a pretty interesting story with that. I actually bought my Wii U from a coworker, and it came loaded with a couple of digital games and the GameCube adapter for Super Smash Bros. And some GameCube controllers and a bunch of games. Sadly, the digital games, which unfortunately included Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, are no longer able to be played on the Wii U, but I still like a lot of the games that I'm playing, and I'm still looking out for a couple. So right here we have Zombie U and LEGO Marvel Superheroes, which are the two that I actually haven't played on the Wii U yet, but I'm working on it, trust me. Just recently beat Rayman Legends on the Wii U, which was an amazing platformer. I highly recommend that one if you haven't played it. And Mass Effect 3, the Special Edition. I played Mass Effect 3 on the Xbox 360. I played a little bit of it on the Wii U. Kind of interesting. You can see the map or inventory down on the bottom screen while the game's played on the top screen. But yeah, a lot of people know about Mass Effect 3. Here I've got a copy of Bayonetta 2 along with Nintendo Land. Bayonetta 2 is fantastic. Really interesting how Nintendo was able to grab Bayonetta as an exclusive franchise. Definitely one of the reasons why you should pick up a Wii U or Switch now, I guess, seeing as they ported it to Switch. And the third game's coming out for Switch also. Nintendo Land was fun for like, I don't know, 10 minutes. About as fun as a pack-in game can be. And here we find even more Zelda. We got Wind Waker HD, Breath of the Wild, and also Twilight Princess. Now this is... I made up for it for not having them on GameCube. I have the HD versions, which are pretty nice. And yeah, they were pretty much no-brainers when I decided to buy them. Now I did actually play this version of Breath of the Wild on the Wii U first, but I liked it so much that I had to get a special edition. And now I also have the Switch version of the game as well. And that's my only Switch game. And as a little bonus, I have this nice little holiday gift guide from GameStop. So this is the end of the first part of my collection video series that I'm going to be doing. Stay tuned for the next episode where we delve into my PlayStation collection. See you in the next one.